hears it in the night. I pray, but the demons don't subside. I wake up in the morning, see my life through my new eyes. The vision is clear, I'm making all things right. Tighten the screws, cause last night I almost died. I'll see you in the morning, I'll say to you, come on, let's talk.
Ladies and gentlemen, how you doing? It is Wild Wacky Wednesday. Oh my goodness. Yes, indeed. Hope everybody is up. They wash their face, brush their teeth, wash their ass, all that good stuff, and get some coffee. Make sure you get some coffee so you can wake all the way up. Make it extra black and strong. Yes, indeed. I like mine's blended though. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I have some news, but I would rather talk about this news with my brother, my guest, Vic Ferrari, unless my brother, my other half has some information, has some news.
Well, we're all still racist.
Yes, so, every day.
I see this clip, and this woman, or these two women are on Dr. Phil, right? And it's a black woman and this other one, I guess she's from India or something like that. So, man, they've got the greatest grift of all time. So they get these liberal white women to pay them big money to tell them that they're racist and that what they can do to not be racist, but they're always going to be racist. The perfect grift, man. You'll forever get paid.
Look, I'll show you how not to be racist, but you're still going to be racist after I show you how not to be racist.
It's like going to the doctor and saying, "Hey, doc, I don't feel good. These are my symptoms." And it's like, well, I'm going to give you the cure, but you're always going to be sick, and you're going to have to keep coming back and keep coming back.
Yeah, that sounds like trying to cancel cable.
Oh my
man.
Lord, have
Only
mercy.
In America.
Only in America.
Oh man, that's it, man. That's it.
Well, it's the same old day after day. Oh, you know that that Gavin Newsom is wanting to charge Ron DeSantis with kidnapping because he's been sending all those migrants over to California.
What a mess. What a mess.
That's why it'll always be Wacky Wednesday in America.
Everyday wacky and weird. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we have a special guest today. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to Mr. Vic Ferrari. I'll let him introduce himself. Sir, please introduce yourself to everybody at the show.
Well, first of all, guys, thank you for having me on your show. I appreciate the opportunity. It's guys like you that have podcasts and radio shows that enables me to sell my books. My name is Vic Ferrari. Born and raised in the Bronx, New York City kid. Lived there for 40 years. Became a New York City police officer and later a detective. Worked 20 years with the NYPD. Wow. I worked in a lot of specialized units. I worked in an undercover, like a decoy unit. I worked in a DUI unit. I worked in Manhattan North Narcotics Division during the crack epidemic in the early 90s. And my last 10 years, I was a detective in the NYPD's auto crime division. So anything with chop shops, stolen vehicles, exporting stolen vehicles out of the country, a lot of mafia and organized crime cases. And after 20 years, I retired, moved down to Florida, and I got into writing. I've written a series of 6 books, 4 of which are a behind-the-scenes look into the New York City Police Department.
Wow. Huh.
He's Dirty Harry.
Right.
Not a foot shorter.
Oh, man. That's a long time. What made you get into police force?
Growing up in New York City, I used to watch the blue and white police cars racing around the neighborhood, chasing the bad guys. Around the corner from the movie theater when I was a little boy was a police station. So like on a Saturday, my mom would take me to a matinee to see Herbie the Love Bug or whatever the hell was playing. And I was just fascinated with the police cars. And then I'd watch the cops, how they came out of the station house and how they interacted with each other. And then by the age of 10, my friends and I used to sneak into the post office and steal FBI wanted posters off the wall. And then we'd walk around the neighborhood conducting manhunts. So, some poor construction worker trying to get a sandwich in a deli, and a pack of 10-year-olds walk in with a wanted poster and we're like, that could be that fucker right there. So like I knew what I wanted to do when I was a little boy. I always, growing up watching all the cop movies and cop shows, I knew what I wanted to do. And I was like a fish to water as soon as I got the job. It was the dream job for me.
Got you. So you're the only one in the family that went to the police force?
I was the first, and then my younger brother, who I refer to in my books as Fredo Corleone. Fredo became. I love my younger brother, but his heart wasn't into it. My younger brother became a cop probably about 5 years after I was in, and he's retired too.
Awesome. So what made you get to writing, becoming an author? What made you do that?
Bored out of my mind. I mean, I retired from the NYPD. The NYPD is like a 20-year merry-go-round, right? And it's like you got your ups, your downs. There's so much going on. But if you hang around too long, Seabiscuit's going to throw you on your head. So I retired after 20. I moved down to Florida. I became a cop for a short time down here with a local police department. And it was like, it was a bad fit. Like, it was a great police department. But here I come, with all this experience at 41 years old. And it's a different game down here. It's like having a stroke and trying to learn something all over again. Right. So like there was so many differences. Like I spent a half a day learning how to wrestle an alligator. And I'm like, let me just shoot this fucking thing. Like what? Well, no, you get duct tape and you get behind him and I'm hold it's I guess the snoot or whatever. And I was like, I'm not doing this. So I was a cop down here for about 6 or 8 months. I said, thanks, but no thanks. I re-retired, and my friends and family said, you got all these stories. Why don't you just start writing them down? And I said, well, who wants to listen to me? Who care what I have to say? We'll just try. And I wrote my first NYPD book, and it started selling, and I wrote a second, and it just kind of bloomed into a cottage industry.
Okay. How many books do you have out right now?
6, and I'm working on my 7th.
Awesome. That's beautiful, man. So let me ask you a question. Being that you're now out of the force, what do you think is going on right now with the police? What is your opinion on it right now? What do you
with the NYPD?
Just period, police period.
Well, I mean, I could speak to the NYPD is the largest police department in the country, right? Like at any given time, they've got 30 to 40,000 members. So let me start there. The NYPD is a very political police department, and unfortunately, it goes in waves, right? So New York City, when I first got hired, was a dump. We had Mayor Ed Koch. Koch was a good mayor. He was a good man. He just didn't understand crime. He liked the cops. He supported the cops, but he didn't care what Times Square looked like. It just didn't affect him. Then we had the late great Mayor Dinkins, who ignored crime, and New York got even worse. And in New York, primarily votes Democratic, but desperate times call for desperate measures, and that's how Rudy got in. Rudy Giuliani came from being a U.S. attorney at the Southern District prosecuting high-profile mafia cases. I mean, Rudy basically single-handedly, of course with others, but Rudy's face is on the poster, basically decimated the 5 families of the mafia. So, everybody sees that and they go, well, we need help. Right. So Rudy became mayor for 2 terms, and Rudy cleaned up New York. He did. He supported the cops. He took the handcuffs off us. Then Bloomberg came in. I don't think Bloomberg was as much law and order as Rudy, but Bloomberg understood to keep a safe city, your bond ratings are going to increase. Tourism's going to come in. He just kind of kept the city in autopilot. Right. When he left, you got de Blasio, when he just ignored crime. And now Eric Adams, I don't think he really knows what he's doing. And you just got an out of control city right now.
He talked a good game, but then he gets in and
he talked a good game, but he ain't backed up nothing yet.
Well, you can tell he's kind of in over his head because you've got that migrant crisis, right? You've got all these people that just keep flooding into New York. and he's going to the federal government. He's like, help. Well, the problem is there's no money to be had, and they don't want to hear it. That's what they want. They want to flood major cities with illegal aliens. So now he's kind of between a rock and a hard place, because now he's speaking out about it, and now they're going to punish him for running his mouth. So I think he's realized now it's a catch-22 where he's sitting.
Well, you heard his new proposal. He wants people that have extra rooms in their houses to take these migrants into their homes.
That's communism.
Exactly. That's exactly what the news was talking about.
You have too much. I don't have enough. So you're going to have to hand that over.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Absolutely ridiculous. Well, I'll tell you what, when I had Vic on my show, the guy had so many cool stories. You could just let him talk the rest of the time. We don't have to do nothing.
Oh. Well, look, let me get a couple questions in first before I let him rip. So, look, man, what do you think about the Black Lives Matter situation, the fund the police? What's your thoughts on that, man?
Well, you defund the police. Who are you going to call? Ghostbusters? Right? I mean, unfortunately, what's happening is, cops don't have all this power. They're civil servants. I laugh like when people ask me, like, what is the biggest, misconceived thing with the New York City police? I go, that there's consequences for your actions. Like, you're not running around. It's not like a Lethal Weapon movie where you're crashing cars and you get into 2 shootouts and then you go out for a beer. You get into an accident at the NYPD, you're not getting in a car for a while. You keep getting into accidents. They don't want to hear that shit. There's civil liability. You can be sued at the drop of a hat. You get into a shooting. Here's another thing. People think that like cops just go around shooting people. Let's say 2 of us are working a day shift. We're doing a 7 to 3, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Best case scenario shooting. 8:30 in the morning, a guy comes out of a bank with a gun and he's shooting. And we light him up, right? Justifiably. we light his ass up, right? Sergeant's going to respond. He's going to start asking you questions. Lieutenant's going to respond. He's going to start asking you questions. The duty captain is going to come. He's going to interview you, right? Then internal affairs is going to come. The district attorney is going to come with a stenographer and take your statement that day. And detectives are you're not going home for probably 24 hours. They're going to investigate this. They usually put you on modified assignment, which means they take your gun and shield pending investigation. Wow. If they think the shooting is even questionable, they'll ship you off to one of the NYPD Siberia. It's not like you just go back to work with your friends. They'll send you to the court section, or there's so many places to hide you in the NYPD that that's what they'll do if they think the shooting is even the slightest thing off, or it's catching a lot of bad press. Sometimes it's a good shooting, and the press, for whatever reason, jumps all over it and tries to make it a bad shooting. Mm-hmm. So it's not like, guys are just lighting people up and that's the end of it. I mean, they look at you, and here's another thing, like guys that work, there's no rhyme or reason to it, but like guys that work in the busier houses tend to get into more shootings because there's more things going on, right? You get into a couple of shootings, even if they're good, they'll say, hey, you know what? We're going to put you someplace nice. They try to hide you. They'll move you to like a less crime area.
Right.
So, I mean, there's consequences in police work. So, with the Black Lives Matter and everything, they think that like the cops are just running around thumping people. Like, this isn't the 1950s where if the sheriff didn't like you, you're going to wind up in a ditch at the end of town. I mean, everybody's got a cell phone camera. Cops are wearing body cams, Ring doorbells. Where is the... You show me every now and then, and I get it. You get some bad apples that'll do something stupid. Right. I think it was in Louisville or Memphis a couple of months ago where they just beat they beat the guy to death. But that doesn't, that's the exception to the rule. If you had all these high profile things, why isn't it on the news all the time?
Mm-hmm. There you go. Right.
Well, you see that they're starting to lower the standards for a lot of these police departments just to get bodies in there.
Right. It's crazy.
That's going to cause a nightmare.
And they got to have so many women on the force and blah, 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 blah. So, whatever you had to run to qualify. They've now taken the time down. So, because, you get a woman that's going to go chase down a criminal. The criminal's going to slow down just for her.
Right.
What I noticed, like when I got hired, it was tough to get hired. So, you had to fill out a ton of paperwork. You got assigned an investigator. And it wasn't like they were friendly with you. I mean, I had a female that really broke my balls because I had a lot of menial jobs as a kid, supermarkets. I cleaned planes at the airport. I unloaded trucks for UPS. So she had to go to all these places and ask around. Then she had to go to my neighborhood and interview my neighbors. Then you had to take a series of psychologicals, and that was an all-day thing, if memory serves me correctly. You had to take several long psychologicals, and then you would meet with a psychologist like months later to go over, like if they even thought something didn't look right, you would meet with a psychologist and answer questions. Physical fitness, you had, I mean, I wasn't a Navy SEAL, right? But I was a 21-year-old kid in decent shape. I mean, I didn't find the physical requirements tough at all. Yet in the police academy, there were people that were overweight that had difficulty doing the run. Like I remember we had to run a mile or a mile and a half at the beginning, and then you had to run it at the end of your police academy training to graduate. And I remember that people looked like dead fish in a fishbowl. You know what I mean? Like just sucking air. So I think they have lowered the standards. I remember as my last couple of years as a detective, I would get a phone call occasionally from guys that worked in the applicant investigation unit. And they go, yeah, hi, Detective Ferrari, did you lock up Joe Blow in 1997 for a stolen car? I'm like, it sounds familiar. They go, could you get back to us and tell us the facts and circumstances? So I would go and find one of my cases. I'd open it up. I go, what do you want to know? And they says, well, the case, he says he was the passenger in the car and blah, blah, blah. He says, no, he was the driver and the ignition was punched. So it's not like I just happened to catch a ride with one of my friends. This guy actually stole the car. So I was starting to get questions like that. Whereas when I know when I got hired, if I was even in a stolen car, that was it. They would close. Thank you, thanks, but no thanks. So yeah, they definitely jockeyed things around to throw bodies at the problem.
Question. A lot of people question the training of officers. Give us a little bit in detail of the training that you all go through to become officers so people will know.
Yeah, and that's another thing that they think that just, they give cops a gun and a nightstick and
Right.
say, have at it. Nowadays, I mean, there is more training for cops than there was when I got hired, and I thought there was a lot. So for me, it was 6 months of training at the police academy, 5 days a week, and it was, you had the classroom stuff, right? The police science, law, social science. There was another thing I can't remember. Then you had to go to driver training out in Brooklyn. They have this old abandoned airport that was used during World War II, a military base where we would do driver training. And then you had the range out in Rodman's Neck, out in City Island. There's tons of training. And it's not just like, that's it. You're constantly going for training. Like we had to go to borough-based training once or twice a year where, they would pull a couple of cops from each precinct. You'd sit in a classroom and there'd be a couple of guys from the borough going over new interim orders, new laws, new things the department said, we're not doing this anymore, or there's more of an emphasis on this, or this law changed, so you can't do this anymore, or the expectation of privacy with this law has changed, or, civil things, that cops are responsible for so many things, and it's like people think cops are lawyers. I used to say, I wish I got a retainer for this, because the question's like, it's like, you're going to have to mediate this in civil court. This is above my pay grade, but nobody wants to hear it. But yes, there's a ton of training, especially now, in law enforcement.
Right. Now here's another question I got for you. As far as officers on the beat, do all officers know the area they're patrolling? Is it new to them? Do they know the area when they're patrolling the area?
Right. So in New York, right, like a police academy class is anywhere from, a small class would be like 250 cops. And then the big class is 2,500, 3,000 recruit, right? So you graduate the police academy, and then they're going to send you to a precinct. And if we call it juice, or a phone call, or a hook, or a crane, if you really know somebody big, what could get you into the precinct you want to go to. Like my dad was a butcher. I didn't know anybody. I went right into the South Bronx. So no, it's not like, what they try to do is, they try to get you close to where you live, but not too close. So if you lived in the Bronx, chances are you'd work in the Bronx or Harlem. if you lived in Queens, chances are you would work in Queens or Brooklyn. If you lived in Staten Island or Brooklyn, you'd work in Staten Island. So they try to get you within, a half hour, 45-minute commute to where you got to work.
Got you.
So, but no, you don't. A lot of times you don't know. But when they punish you, right? So say for argument's sake, you're a cop in the Bronx and you really screw up like bad. They'll transfer you to Staten Island. That's an hour and a half each way with tolls. They call it highway therapy because they will, and it's called launch, not a transfer. They'll launch you on your head. And, you worked in Staten Island, they'll transfer you to the Bronx. And they don't, you're paying tolls. It's an hour and a half each way just to make your life miserable.
Did you piss off any of your ex cops in some of the stuff you wrote in your books?
I don't think so. I changed enough. That's what I was afraid of. When I got into writing these books, I remember with my first book, I'm sitting there with my finger on the Amazon button to upload it. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like, there's a lot of stuff in here. But the reality is I changed the names, the dates, the ranks, the locations. I don't point anybody out. Now, if you were working with me or you were a cop in the borough at that time period, you're going to remember that story. You're going to know who I'm talking about. But I don't get that close to the target where someone can turn around and go, hey, that's me. You know what I mean? It's not like I'm saying, yeah, that's Dan. You know what I mean? I change enough.
Yeah. But did any of them call you up and say, hey, you were talking about me, weren't you?
Yeah. Well, they think it's funny. Like, I thought I was going to catch blowback, but now it's like, you should write about this guy. And remember this guy. I was afraid, like, guys were going to clam up, and they're running at me with shit. Like, I'll tell you a funny story. I was just on the phone with my friend the other day, and I'm writing a story about, I'll tell you the story. I've always loved Irish Wolfhounds. They're big dogs. And I take him to the local park for the first time. I let him off the leash and he's running around, right? The next thing you know, he's rolling around in something. So I go, what is that? I run over. There's a big pile of horse shit in the middle of the field. He finds this thing and he's rolling around in it. I'm like, oh no. Right. So I finally get the leash on him. He's covered in horse shit. And I'm like, oh my God. I can't put him in the car. I live too far from home to walk him. Right. And I go, where did this come from? I go, the mounted unit. There's a mounted unit in the back of Pelham Bay Park. I go, they're responsible for this, right? So I follow the trail. It says, mounted unit, no restricted property, no trespass. I walk right into a barn. I tie my dog up next to a barn, right? I'm looking around for shampoo with a hose, and a mounted cop comes out. He goes, who are you? So I show him my ID card. He goes, well, the inspector doesn't want anybody back here. I go, too bad. I said, one of your horses took a dump in the field. I said, and now I got to clean them off. So he gets me this horse and mane shampoo, which I never even knew there was a shampoo for horses. Clean off my dog. So as I'm writing this story, my friend goes, oh, I got a story better than that. And for mounted unit, I go, what? And he goes, there was a mounted cop in the 70s that would go to this in Midtown Manhattan on the west side. There was this bar that had double wide doors and it had a beer garden out back. So this is the 70s. The mounted cop would lower his head, walk through the bar, tie up his horse in the back of this bar in the beer garden and have a liquid lunch. He goes, sometimes like the horse would crap on the floor and then the drunks would run to OTB because they thought it was like good luck, right? So this went on. It was the best kept secret. Well, one day the horse drops dead in the beer garden. Now the cop's not in a bar drinking. And how did the horse die in the back of the beer garden, right? So what the cop winds up doing is the bartender's brother owned a towing company. So he calls his brother. His brother pulls up a tow truck. They run the steel cable through the bar. They hook it up to the horse's bridle and slowly drag this dead horse through the bar. Once the horse reaches the sidewalk, the tow truck guy goes, I'm not getting involved in this. He takes off. The cop gets on his radio and calls in that his horse just dropped dead. The cavalry shows up and the cop is crying and the drunks backed up his story like, oh, yeah, he tied it up out front to use the bathroom and the horse died. So it's like, I never heard that story before, but my friend swears by it. He said, yeah, the horse died out back and they had to tow it through the whole bar to get it to the front, then for him to call for the cavalry.
Wow. Crazy.
I remember you telling me you caught some people in some sexual positions while you were on duty. Yeah, tell those.
Oh, you want to hear that story? I mean, it's happened more than once, but the best one that really I remember is it's the early 90s. I'm working up in the Bronx. We get called out. It was like a Friday night to a short stay motel. You know, people meet there because they can't meet people due to marital obligations. And we go up to this door. And just before I'm going to bang on the door, I hear a woman scream, "Be a man and put it in my ass." We start laughing, right? We're outside the door. I'm like, I'm on my knees. I can't stop laughing. So I go, we got to see who's in there. Like, you know, like, I mean, yeah, I don't want to bother anybody having sex, but at the same time, I want to make sure someone's like, it's not like Pulp Fiction where there's a guy in a gimp box. You know what I mean? Like, so I start banging on the door with the nightstick, and I hear the woman yell, I told you you're making too much noise. So who is it? Police, open up. So the door opens, the door creaks, and there's this little old man with no shirt on and a pair of boxer shorts, and his testicles are hanging like right through his shorts. Like, I don't want to see this. Right? So I go, look, Pop, I hate to bother you. I says, but we got to come inside to check to make sure everything's all right. He goes, all right. He lets us in. Granny's in bed with the comforter up to her nose. I walk through the small room. I go into the bathroom, check the shower, make sure no one's hiding in there. It's all right, carry on. Sorry to bother you. It's like, okay. And then my partner's a smart ass. He turns to the old lady. He goes, did he put it in your ass? And then she turns around. She was nasty. She goes, wouldn't you like to know? And we left.
Oh my God, man. That's
I
crazy.
can't believe I'm telling these stories at 9 o'clock in the morning, but whatever.
Hey, it helps to wake you up.
I'm awake.
So let me ask you a question, brother. Do you feel the officers do enough work on the street? You know what I'm saying? Like as far as talking to people and communicating to the community, you feel they do enough of that?
They used to. Like, so when I was a rookie, right, it worked like this. So in the old days, before you even got to a precinct, they would put you in field training.
Okay.
So each field training unit had about 50 cops and would cover 3 precincts or a zone. So what would happen is every day you would go to your locker, you get changed, and the sergeant would give you foot posts in these precincts. So you'd be on foot. You had to talk to people. You know, you're on a street corner. People are coming up to you asking you questions. If you didn't have the answer, you call for the supervisor. And then a couple of times a month, you weren't on foot. You'd be in a car with a sergeant, and you would respond to different radio calls, and you would learn the job, right? So yeah, you did get to learn how to talk to people. I mean, that's an art, right? Communication. Right. Nowadays, the rookie cops go to a precinct, right? And then what they do is they'll take 8 rookies, they'll put them in a van with the sergeant, and they drive around looking for summons activity. So now you got 8 rookies playing with their phones in a van, right? The sergeant sees, for argument's sake, some guy drinking a beer in front of a building. The van stops. All 8 cops get out to stretch their legs. The sergeant orders the cop to write the guy a summons. The optics on that are terrible. Someone's looking out their window. They see a police van writing the super of the building a beer drinking summons with 8 cops standing around. You don't think that rubs the community the wrong way? Right. On top of that, there's such an emphasis for summonses. That super might have been the guy that calls the police to tell you the guy in 4B is selling crack out of the apartment. The NYPD is short-sighted. They've got addicted to summonses. I mean, there's always been a summons quota, but then they really started managing it like they call it activity, but it's BS. I mean, it's revenue for the city. And the NYPD never knows when to take its foot off the gas with something. So like Giuliani drove the numbers down, but then they're always like, well, what are the numbers this month? What are the numbers this month? Well, it's the same as if, God forbid, you had cancer and you go for chemotherapy and the cancer is gone, but then they keep sending you for chemotherapy. It's like, well, back off. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to keep carpet bombing this neighborhood with cops, giving summonses out. You delivered the message, let him, you know what I mean? But they don't. They've just become addicted to statistics.
Right. Do you think that for instance, they're trying to make it so that now they're doing like community policing? Do you feel that'll help the police more as far as communities getting together and policing their own neighborhoods? You feel that'll help the police?
No, They tried community policing in the early 90s and it was an epic failure. And I'm going to tell you why. It sounds great. It sounds great to have a cop on the corner. He knows everybody. You know what I mean? People from the community are going to come to he or she and tell them what's going on, right? That's, I mean, in theory, it sounds great. So the NYPD started this program called CPOP, Community Policing on Patrol, right? Okay. So what happens is no cop wants to be on foot unless there's a perk with it, right? And CPOP, what they offered was weekends off, flexible hours. What happened with the NYPD is every empty suit, you know, went into those positions. It's not the cops that are going to do their job. It's the lazy ones. Right. So, yeah, you're going to give them a foot post, but that's the guy sleeping in the back of a barber shop. It was. I saw it in my precinct. It was at the laziest. All the lazy guys and girls went into CPOP, right? On top of that, the NYPD is paranoid about police corruption, and rightfully so, but they're paranoid about it. They don't want you really buddying up that much with the community. So if I've got a foot post, right, on a busy business district, you don't think that the guy that owns the diner, that I'm in there every day telling kids to stay out front, kicking out drunks, you don't think he's going to give me a free meal from time to time? You don't think that he's going to give me a cup of coffee? You don't think the barber is going to charge me half price for a haircut? It's going to happen. It goes hand in hand. Right. So, but they don't want it. So then what winds up happening is you get the cops paranoid about enforcing laws in their own area. So with these CPOP cops, right, they would come to me and say, can you do me a favor? There's so many cars double parking in the bus stop in front of this restaurant. Can you come by once in a while and give them parking tickets? And I go, why don't you do it? Well, I don't want to off the diner owner. So you see what I mean? They would come to us to enforce the law, like the cops ride around, the patrol cops. Right. Like, good job, man. You know what I mean? So it sounds great, but they haven't perfected it. It was a failure. I mean, they did away with it after a couple of years. They're probably going to. That's federal money too, and that's another catch-22 with law enforcement. And that's why you see like the big emphasis on DUIs, because it's federal money. So what the feds will do is they'll say, we're going to give your police department, I don't know how many 100 million, or, a small police department, $5 million, but we want DWI arrests, or we want community policing. So there's always strings attached when a police department accepts that federal money. You know what I mean? And it's not for the good a lot of times. It's not. You don't want to incentivize with overtime to making arrests, giving out summonses. You know what I mean? That's not the way the world works.
Right. Got you. Question. Just yesterday, we had another school shooting. What can be done to protect our schools and our children?
I think it starts at home.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It's I'm not a parent, but if I was, I would rummage through my kid's backpack occasionally. You know what I mean? I would do spot checks on their room. I'd want to know who their friends are. I'd want to have a tracking thing on my phone that I could monitor where they are, who their friends are, have their friends come over so I can meet them. The school can only do so much once that gun gets in there.
Right.
And a lot of schools have school resource officers where the sheriff's office or the local police department puts a cop in there. I mean, some schools where it's really bad, they'll actually have a magnetometer where the kids have to walk through. And unfortunately, this has happened. It is happening. And I think more, but sometimes the teachers unions don't want a cop there. Sometimes the teachers union is like, well, we don't need a cop here. Well, why, we don't want one here. Okay. And then when something happens, then they want the cop there. So, you can't have it both ways. But I really think that starts at home. Like, parents should be more involved in their kids' lives as opposed to letting technology put them in front of YouTube or putting them in front of TikTok or whatever app there is, because, parents have gotten lazy. Not all, but some, and have let technology raise their kids, and the kids are basically raising themselves.
Right. What do you think about teachers being trained?
I think if a teacher, if in accordance with their state, if they're allowed to have a carry permit, yeah, why not? As long as it's a legal gun and it's legally, they've had the training, you know what I mean? And they have a concealed carry permit. Yeah, I don't see a problem with it.
Okay, perfect. All right. In case you haven't followed, Baltimore is now charging the parents for their children's actions. Yeah, Baltimore is now doing that. They now put a curfew out. If the child out at a certain time, the parents are getting fined. What do you think about that?
Desperate times call for desperate measures. Baltimore, I know, is always up there in crime stats. So obviously they've got to try something. You know what I mean? I've seen, I don't know Baltimore well, but, I've seen photos and it kind of looks like the Bronx did in the 70s and 80s when I got hired. So, I mean, it's a step in the right direction if it works. If it doesn't work, then it's time to try something else.
Right. Huh. All right. So, what was I need? Do. Brain fart. You got anything, brother? Let me get my thoughts together.
I think he needs to tell some more of those stories.
Yeah, feel free to tell the stories, man. What do you
guys want to hear? Point me in a direction, man.
Oh man, because you had so many great stories. Oh man, trying to think.
I'll tell you the Hansel and Gretel story.
Okay.
It's the early 90s. My friends and I were going to cop bars, meeting girls, and there's this cop in another precinct who works with a guy that I know, and he was a magician. That's his side gig. So on weekends, he does kids' parties and, bachelor parties. And so we're at the bar, and he's coming over to girls, and he's pulling flowers out of his sleeve. He's pulling gold coins behind their ears. He's basically cock blocking us with magic. So I turn to his partner, and I go, can you get him out of here? Like, I can't compete with this guy. And he goes, I wish he took police work as serious as he does making balloon animals in the police car. He says, because he goes, he's a lazy cop, but he's the greatest magician. So a couple of weeks later, the magician and this guy get called out to a 6-story building, basement apartment on a midnight, comes over, his 911, calls for help, hangs up. They get into the basement. There's 2 apartments. They go to door number 1. They bang on the door. Nobody answers. The other guy goes to bang on door number 2, and the magician stops him. He goes, come on. He goes, it's late. We made a lot of noise down here with our radios. If someone called 911, they would have come out again. This guy goes to bang on the door again. He goes, come on, I'll buy you a cup of coffee. Let's get out of here. And they leave. What they didn't know is behind door number 2, the super of the building was selling coke out of his apartment. And he was falling behind on his payments to his wholesaler. So he knew he had a problem. He wasn't coming out of his apartment. So what these guys did was an old gypsy trick. They bring an attractive female. They knock on the door, and they put the female's face in front of the door. So the super's a cokehead. He's like, oh, wow, found money. He opens the door, and these 2 Albanian hitmen, the 3 of them, come crashing into his apartment. They start pistol whipping him. Where's the money? Where's the drugs? He doesn't have it. They shoot the super in the head. They roll him up in a carpet. They take him out of the apartment, and they throw him in the furnace of this building. So while he's going up like a fire log, they go back into the apartment, and they're ransacking it. Now you got the 2 cops outside, and they're almost going to knock on that door. So the 2 Albanian hitmen tell the girl, and she's in on this. It's not like she was an innocent victim. They tell her, listen, this is what we're going to do. They knock on this door, let them in. Just start yelling in Yugoslavian and point to the kitchen and walk them down the hallway. When you get past the threshold of this bedroom door, throw yourself on the floor. We'll come out from behind. We'll kill them. We'll throw them in the oven, the furnace, and we'll get the hell out of here. They never knock on the door. So a couple of weeks later, the super is nowhere to be found, right? His family gets concerned. They call the police. The detectives get involved. The detectives bring in my friend and the magician. And they go, you got called out to the 6-story walk-up a couple of weeks ago. What happened? Did you see anything? And they go, no, we knocked on this door, but we didn't knock on that door. So they go, all right, anything else? And this guy, the other guy became my partner years later. He goes, we were leaving. I noticed there was a car parked in a fire hydrant, and I gave it a parking ticket. That was the getaway car registered to the female. The detectives trace the car to the female. They bring her in for questioning. She gives up the 2 hitmen. They grab everybody. Everybody gets arrested. And then what winds up happening is the detectives have to go back to the building in like January or February, shut the heat off, So everybody froze their ass off in that building for 2 or 3 days until it cooled down enough that they could get that guy's skull and bones out of the furnace. So that story in one of my books is called "Last Night a Magician Saved My Life," because had the guy knocked on the door, the three of them would have died.
Wow.
So,
Let me ask you a question, bro. I got a question came back to me. As far as you all doing your job, arresting, these criminals on the street, how do you feel about these guys being prosecuted? Do you feel they're being lightly prosecuted now, or is it the same as when you was in the force? How do you feel about that?
No, it's obvious they're not being prosecuted. They're letting them out.
Right.
They juggle the numbers. As far as so a district attorney is judged on conviction rate, right? So I can speak to like my time when I was there.
Right.
So when they're up for re-election, they want to go out and say, I've got a 95% conviction rate. Well, it's kind of disingenuous because they're counting plea bargains. They're not counting acquittals. See, like places like the Bronx and Brooklyn, in my time, things rarely went to trial. And so car cases and stuff, they usually got DP'd, declined to prosecute, or deed. So you lock a guy up for a stolen car with a felony, and then they would knock it down to unauthorized use of a motor vehicle, a misdemeanor. But that counts as a conviction. So they don't want to take things to trial. So that was in my time that, and if you worked in auto theft, you just knew it. You just knew, you got the guy, the car was stolen like 6 hours ago, the ignition is broken, and they're charging the guy with a misdemeanor. You just kind of knew the way it worked.
Right.
Nowadays, I mean, it's crazy. In certain places, I don't know if they've done this in New York, but I think they have. Shoplifting, depending on the amount. So, like if you stole a can of tuna fish, obviously that's a misdemeanor, right? And I forget. I think it was when I was a rookie cop, and I could be wrong, but it's $250 back then. I think anything north, if you stole something from a store, north of $250, it was a felony. Then I think it became like $1,000 or $1,500. And now someplace, I don't know where, but I heard it on the news, it's like $900. You have to steal $900, more than $900 for it to be a felony. So that basically means you can go into a store and fill your pockets up with crap and run out. You know what I mean? And if you get caught and it's less than $900, it's a misdemeanor. So no one's going to jail. And on top of that, now they've made it bailless cash. So now no one's, if you get grabbed for something and you're on Rikers Island for a couple of months, chances are you're going to take the plea bargain because the 3 months you've already been in jail is already counted for your jail time, right? So guys, we always used to say that if a guy is in, before trial, chances are he's already in the system. It's already time. He's already earned time against his sentence. He's going to take a plea.
Right.
If you let guys go, who the hell wants to go to jail? They're out. They're not going to take a plea.
Right. Wow. So I know you got stories, man. Tell me what the worst case you was on, man, that you had to go through on a force.
I've walked into a couple of homicides. The worst one was October, slow night, raining, weeknight. Comes over as a domestic, and one car picks up the job, and it was a slow night. Another car goes to back him because nothing's going on. Then the dispatcher says, I'm getting multiple calls on this from multiple people. So now there's something to it. So we were the third car, my partner and I. We start rolling there. It's starting to drizzle out, and it was garden apartments, like 3 stories. And the responding cops, the cops that had the job, pulled up on the side of the building, not the front. And they get out of the car and they hear screams coming out of a window. So they were in their 20s. They go up the fire escape. When they go to the fire escape, they look in the window. There's a woman laid out on the floor. There's a guy above her with a butcher knife. I mean, this sounds like something from a Stephen King movie, but it's true. There's a guy with a butcher knife and he's decapitating her. So they get on the radio and they just start screaming into the radio, right? So now everybody's flying over there in the rain. Everybody's wiping out, right? We pull up to the front of the building. Myself and my partner and another radio car get there at the same time. So we jump out, the 4 of us. As we're getting out of the car, we hear boom, 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 boom. We hear like 6 or 7 shots. So we put over shots fired over the air. We're running up the stairs of this building, and a young boy, about 13 or 14 years old, comes running down the stairs, and he's yelling, "He's killing my mother. He's killing my mother." We get up to the door, and we're trying to kick in the door now, right? Now we hear our coworkers in the apartment, and they're screaming because they don't want to get hit with friendly fire. They're screaming, "Don't shoot, don't shoot." So we go, open the door, open the door. So they open the door, and the first thing I notice is it's like somebody lit a pack of firecrackers in the apartment because of the gunpowder. So it's like a haze, in the lighting. Then as we're walking through the apartment, our feet start sticking to the floor because there's so much blood.
Wow.
So what happened was the guy is on top of the woman. She was already dead, but he was decapitating her. It was her boyfriend. They start banging on the window. He turns around and sees it and goes, "Oh, you want some of this?" Grabs the knife, turns around, throws open the window, and starts hacking at them. Back then we had the 38s. So the two of them unloaded on him and sent him back into the apartment. He fell down, and the apartment was trash. Like, this guy was like going to hell, and he knew it. Like, there wasn't a thing in that apartment that wasn't broken. There wasn't a dish, the television, the walls. I mean, everything was destroyed. And this poor woman is laying there, like basically her neck is gone. The only thing really holding her head to her body was her spine. And I mean, the look of horror in her face, like, in the movies, people die with their eyes closed. Like,
right.
Her mouth was open, and like it was I'll never forget that face as long as I live. And they were boyfriend, girlfriend. I think she was a couple of years older. Obviously, he was abusive. I'm guessing, she did something he didn't like, or she wanted to leave, and he just killed and mutilated her. And my two coworkers killed the guy.
Wow.
But the wild thing is, we're at the hospital, right? And one of the guys that killed him, his pants, the knife pierced his pants and just missed his leg. Like, he had like a slit in his knee.
Wow.
Like, the guy got that close with the knife.
Jesus.
Oh,
so
so
good.
Yeah,
so something lighter.
So stuff like that. Do you guys go through stuff like they just mentioned, man? Do you guys go through mental health? Like, get help for stuff like that, or
no?
What's the
only counseling was after 9/11, and that was federal money. So you figure, I don't know, 6-8 months after 9/11, right? We've been down at ground zero for months, and then they had us out at the dump cutting open the cars to make sure no one perished in the cars. And then they started bringing us like 10 at a time. I forget, it was someplace in Manhattan, and like you had all these counselors, and listen, they were trying to help, and they made it really nice. Like, you get there and they'd have coffee and pastries, a little finger sandwiches and stuff, and sit down.
Right.
And, how do you feel? And you're not going to get anything out of cops in especially the NYPD, because the NYPD, you start showing any signs that you're not right. First thing they do is they put you on modified assignment, talking to a psychiatrist. They take your guns, they take your ID card, they take your shield, and then they transfer you again to another precinct or the Whitestone Pound or the court section. So guys and girls are not really, even if they do reach out to you,
right,
you're not going to get much because of the way they treat cops. So
wow,
they tried with 9/11, but it wasn't going anywhere because it was funny. I remember like the 10 of us went, they had us there for an hour or so, got absolutely nothing out of us. And I remember like in the ride back, we were all laughing about it. Like, what are they fucking kidding? Like, they're saying this is all off the record. Like, you're talking to cops.
Right.
And no one's going to talk to you. It's just, it's not going to happen.
Wow. Huh. That's crazy. So while we're here, man, give the people the routine. Like, when you pull a person over on like a traffic stop, what should people do when they get pulled over? We should know this, but some people do not know what they're supposed to do when they get pulled over by the police. So
listen, if you want to get out of a ticket, I'm going to give you a 50-50 chance that you're going to get out of a ticket.
Okay.
You get pulled over, roll down all your windows. If you got power windows, assuming everybody does these days, and because most cars have tinted windows, roll down all the windows, shut off the car, and stick your two hands out the window. The cop is going to come by. He's going to be able to see right through your back seat to make sure no one's back there. He's going to see your hands. License or registration. Can I go for my wallet? I'm going to go for my wallet right now, officer. Yeah. before this happens, always have your paperwork in one place. This way, you want to spend the little, and this goes any car stop. You want to spend as little time with the cop as possible.
Right.
Have that. Don't be digging through your car, and because you're going to make him nervous,
Right.
you're going to piss him off. Know where that insurance card, license, and registration is. Boom. Right? He's going to say, do you know why I stopped you? This is where you make your sales pitch. Because you don't want him to leave and get to that car before he starts. Don't get out. That's going to piss him off. The way I worked was this. If you were nice to me, gave me a halfway decent bullshit excuse, or just said, you got me. There's too many scumbags out there to be fucking with that I'm going to bother a working person.
Right.
As long as they got their paperwork and they're nice to me, we got enough enemies out there. I'm not looking to make any more. So don't talk to him until you give him the paperwork. Say, listen, officer, I know what I did. I know I did a Bronx roll through the stop sign, or I know the light was red, but please, I'm having a shit week. You got to make yourself human to that person, right? If he's just a regular cop, you got a 50-50 chance that he might let you go. Traffic cops, they're a whole different cat, man. Like every precinct has, or police department has, just summons guys, and those guys gravitate to those positions because they're antisocial. You know, it's the guy that never dated a girl in high school, or the kid that got picked on, and you know they don't have the balls, you know what I mean, to do a midnight in a busy precinct. They're doing Monday to Friday, pulling over working people and giving them tickets, and they get off on it. And you know, unfortunately, you get pulled over by one of those guys, they're not going to want to hear what you have to say. But don't be an asshole with him, because if you're going to fight it, he's going to remember you. So if you in your mind you're like, I'm going to take this to court, don't tell him that, because he's going to make a notation. He's going to remember you. It's going to be imprinted that you were a pain in the ass. Give you a ticket, fine, and just leave. And then you hire a lawyer, or you know, you get video evidence on the traffic light that it's not timed right, or whatever you're going to do. But you know, arguing with the guy is just going to make it worse for you. So I mean, that's my suggestion. Have your paperwork in one place. You want to spend as little time. Once you give him the paperwork, that's when that's your opportunity to make that pitch before he goes back to the car.
Got you. Another scenario. We have a case right now where an 11-year-old boy had called the police for domestic violence at his house. Officer showed up. Mom, put her hands up. Everything else. Officers told them, to put their hands up and come out the house. 11-year-old boy, I don't know what he did, but 11-year-old boy ended up getting shot by the police. What is the protocol when the police show up to your house? What should they? What you know? What I'm saying, give me a scenario of what your officers. What
depends on what the call is. So it depends on what the call is, right? So if cops are going to knock on the door,
okay,
they're going to want to see people's, especially if it comes over as we call it the fun house. Like you're going into someone's house. It's like home field advantage for them. Right. They know where everything is. They know the hiding spots. You know what I mean? It's like you don't know what you're walking into. It's like walking into Hollow Scream where people are jumping out at you. Like you don't know what people have in their house, or if there's a fucking pit bull waiting in the bedroom. You open that door, you lose your hand. So cops usually, when they knock on the door, especially if the call is hot, like multiple calls, domestic violence, shots fired, they're going to be amped up. That's a little different than an elderly person that fell in their tub, right? So they're going to knock on the door. They're going to, they want to see your hands. If someone's hiding in the background, come out. I want to see you. You know what I mean? Like, you called me here. Let's talk. I don't know what happened with that case. Was the kid armed?
From what I heard, no. But I don't know what the child, what he did.
Right.
What sparked the officer to shoot, I don't know.
I'll tell you a wild story. I got called up, and it was a nice part of town, tall, high-rise building. It was a Saturday morning, and it wasn't a hot call. I forget what it was. A lot of apartments in this hallway, and my partner and I are banging on the door, right? A door opens across the hall, and this boy, about 14 years old, I'll never forget, comes running out with a silver gun in his hand. And the two of us looked at each other, and I think we had, I had 38s back then. and we both wheeled. And I'm like, drop that fucking gun. And the kid just dropped it. We ran over, and it was a toy. It was a 13 or 14-year-old kid playing with his 8-year-old cousin. They were playing cops and robbers in the apartment. They didn't know we were in the hallway, right? We're banging on the neighbor's door. They're screwing around in the apartment. One comes running out. It was like a cap gun. I forget what it was, but it was a replica. It looked real for that second. And like, I was so grateful I didn't take that kid's life because he was just screwing around in his apartment with, he was a good kid. It was just, he didn't know we were out there. He didn't know there were 2 uniformed cops out there. And he came running out with that gun. And like, we just drew on him. And thank God he just dropped it. And then once we ran over to him, we saw it was a toy, and the mother came out and beat the shit out of him. She's yelling in Spanish. Are you crazy? Like, just start smacking him down. It's okay. You know what I mean?
Ollie Hick, the 11-year-old boy is still alive. He wasn't killed. Just to answer your question.
It just depends on the call, man. It depends on if it's a hot call or not. You know what I mean? Cops, especially if they're coming in, you're calling them into your apartment or your house. They want to, they're not just going to sit on the couch and let you entertain them. You know what I mean? They want to see what's going on for their safety and yours.
Right. So when you guys get to the house, if people got an animal, say they got dogs, should they let the dogs in the house too when they come out?
You always say that. You hear a dog bark, and that's the first thing you say. Put that dog away, please.
Right. Okay.
I mean, I'm an animal lover. I don't want to shoot somebody's dog.
Right. Got you. So have you ever had to physically have to, use your gun and while you were in the force?
No, I'm lucky. I mean, and I was involved. I made over 600 arrests, and I was involved in thousands. A handful of times I almost pulled the trigger, and I'm grateful I didn't have to. Because I mean, even at the end of the day, if it's a scumbag, I don't want to take someone's life if I don't have to. You know what I mean? Because that's going to weigh on me. And I'm glad I didn't have to. I had friends. I had a lot of friends that were involved in shooting. I know friends that were shot that went back to work. A good friend of mine, a year or two after we graduated the academy, he on a midnight, him and his old partner pulled over the stolen car. And usually with a stolen car, they're running away from you. This guy was jacked. He had just gotten out of prison. He was, great shape. High on crack. When he crashed the car, or I forget how they stopped him, he jumped out and charged them. This guy that I know is a pretty big guy. Got his gun away from him and shot him in the chest, hit him in the bulletproof vest, and knocked my buddy on the floor. And I asked him, I go, what did it feel like? He goes,
right.
He goes, it was like getting hit with a bat. He says it got quiet. He goes, I couldn't hear anything. He says, and then he goes, if you've ever gotten the wind knocked out of you, he goes, you feel like you're drowning. He goes, I'm rolling around on the floor and I can see things, but I can't hear them and I can't breathe. He goes, it felt like I was suffocating for several minutes. The guy, his partner was a shorter guy, right? The bad guy got his partner in a headlock and he's squeezing shots at his head. But this cop just kept spinning. You know what I mean? Like, so the shots were going wide. Guy runs out of bullets. The precinct cops show up. They light him up. Now he's like a shopping cart. He's, I think, a quadriplegic. He's crapping in a bag. But when they went to the hospital, so one guy's getting treated for trauma, right? The other guy is getting treated. The other guy the bad guy was shooting bullets past his head. He reaches into his pocket to get change, to get a soda out of one of the vending machines. He had a whistle in his pocket. Like, you're supposed to have a whistle when you go on patrol. Nobody carries it, but sometimes they'll ask for it for roll call. So a lot of times cops will take this idiotic equipment they give you to roll call. Then after roll call, it goes back in the locker.
Right.
He had his whistle in his pocket. One of those shots winged the whistle and disintegrated it in his pocket. It was like a molted piece of like sharp metal in his pocket. Wow. Yeah.
Jesus, crazy.
Yeah, but I went to see my buddy at the hospital the next day, and like his whole chest, because like what a bulletproof vest does is it absorbs the impact, but still that energy's got it's still, it can really hurt you. But like, yeah, his whole stomach was like bruised and red for months.
Wow.
He just retired, actually. He did like 35, 36 years, that guy.
Have you ever been in a line of fire? I mean, have you ever been in a line of fire, like somebody shooting at you? Have you ever experienced that?
Yeah, a couple of times, like especially on the midnights, you got people test firing their guns off the roofs and stuff. I remember early in my career, it was up in the 4-1 precinct. You had these two cops that were really breaking balls with the drug dealers on Seneca and Bryan Avenue. And I remember it's like Labor Day weekend or something. And they're calling for shots fired. They had gotten out of their car and they baited them. What they did was they put a couple of guys on the roof because they knew at some point during the night they were going to pull up and bust the drug dealer's balls. So when they pulled up and got out of the car, they started shooting at them. So they got pinned down behind a car. And me and my partner, I drove into the center of the street, and you heard the shots going off. They were spraying the block, and we opened the back doors. They jumped in, and I took off in reverse, going 100 miles an hour, and got them out of there. But yeah, a couple of times.
Wow.
A couple of times, shots have come my way.
Now, one more question, man. What would you tell people about using their cell phone to record police officers? You've been saying that a lot lately now, where people want to record the officer instead of the officer doing their job. What would you tell people with that situation?
What I find remarkable is when a cop is in the fight of his life or getting his ass kicked or needs help, people are filming him instead of helping him. Like, I got to tell you, if I was driving down the street and I saw a cop rolling around with somebody, I'm getting out of the car and I'm not filming it. I'm jumping on the guy's back. So I don't understand this whole thing of videotaping it for views. I just don't. I mean, it's not good for society.
Right.
If a cop's doing something wrong, fine, videotape it. But you see a cop that's in trouble, and your first thought is to videotape it as opposed to help them or get on your phone and call for more cops. I mean, shame on you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cops they're definitely trained better than we are, but people forget cops are also human beings.
Exactly. Yes, indeed.
Did you see the video of those people that they're advocating, against cops, and they said, why don't you shoot them in the leg and blah 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 blah, and then they took those same people and put them in scenarios that cops are in all the time. Yeah,
right.
And how many of them were quick to draw their guns and shoot?
Right.
Bad shoot.
You didn't aim for no leg or no arm.
Nope. Well, that's stupid. You're trained to shoot where
center mass.
Yeah, the center mass is going to be be like those idiots on The View. Why don't they shoot them in the leg? You try shooting somebody while they're running in the leg.
You're gonna probably miss.
Or you're gonna ricochet off the ground
and hit somebody else, right?
That bullet's gonna skip. It's gonna go somewhere. It just doesn't stop.
Yeah. People think all police officers are marksmen.
Yeah.
It'd be nice if they all were marksmen, but they're not, ladies and gentlemen. They're not marksmen.
Well, and a lot of times you're shooting when you're moving.
Right.
When you see marksmen, they're not running when they're shooting.
No.
You know what I mean? That's one of the reasons they went to the 9mm. In the 90s, because with the 38s, you only get 6 shots, and 38s are good for up close and personal. 9mm travels a lot. It's a smaller projectile, but it goes a lot faster, and that gun is much better for like a running gun battle, which happens.
Right. So, man, you said you was writing a new book, man. Tell us about a little bit about your new book that you got writing. You're writing right now.
It's another NYPD themed book. I don't have a title for it yet. Unfortunately, that's usually the thing I struggle with. But my latest NYPD book is called NYPD Law and Disorder. That's the cover. It's about a lot of embarrassing, but the book opens up with embarrassing moments about things that happened to me and other cops in the NYPD, or Grand Theft Auto, the NYPD's auto crime division. That's everything you wanted to know about the stolen car industry and was afraid to ask. Who steals your car? What happens at a chop shop? What happens to your car after it's chopped? How to avoid getting your car stolen? the NYPD's flying circus, cops, crime, and chaos. There's a lot of funny stories in there, including a cop that I know that got drunk and stole a horse and carriage for a wild ride through Central Park. That really happened. And NYPD through the looking glass, stories from inside America's largest police department. That's war stories. My books don't have a beginning, middle, end. They're just chapters filled with short stories about practical jokes, police corruption, homicides, just things that happened to me along my way or along the NYPD.
Awesome. And how do people get to purchase these books?
Yeah, just go to the Amazon book section, type in my name, Vic Ferrari, like the car. My book library will come up. All my books are $10 paperback or $2.99 ebook download. And if you want to get a hold of me on Twitter or Instagram for an interview or you got a question, hit me up at Vic Ferrari 50.
Awesome. Brother, you got any final words, brother?
Well, I encourage everybody to go to my channel, The Vibes Broadcast. Check out the interview that I did with Officer Ferrari here. We had a great time. When Tarek, he messaged me, he says, man, you know any police officers or ex-police officers? I'm like, I got the perfect guy for you.
Perfect. That's indeed perfect.
Yes. We had a good time, man. He had me rolling, laughing, and I was like, yeah, he'd be perfect for the show.
Yes, brother. I appreciate you, man. I appreciate it. Mr. Vic Ferrari, I appreciate you coming on, brother. Appreciate your time, man. Most definitely. It's been great having you on. Very informative, very funny stories, especially with the horse.
Yeah.
Man. So, ladies and gentlemen, like I said, man, you know how to get in touch with Vic Ferrari. His books are Amazon. Other than that, ladies and gentlemen, I want to say thank y'all so much for tuning in. Please do me a favor. Please like, share, and comment. Follow Vic Ferrari on
Twitter and Instagram.
And also check out my brother, The Vibes Broadcast. Great stuff, great interviews. Got an interview with Vic Ferrari. Paranormal activity. Life coaches. Interviews with rock stars, all that good stuff.
Actors.
We got it. We got a lot of good stuff coming, ladies and gentlemen. A lot of good stuff coming. And like I said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. God bless you all. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll be back tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern Time with Blaze Christian Sachet. He's a Cameroon movie producer, actor. Forget it. He does everything. He'll be on the show tomorrow, and he'll be talking about the industry and how we got in the industry, all that good stuff. 9 a.m. Eastern Time, 8 a.m. Central Time. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Love y'all. God bless you all. Tune in tomorrow. Turn your notifications on. Turn your notifications on. Please like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you all tomorrow. Vic Ferrari, appreciate you, brother.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate you, and I love you, brother, like a fat boy loves cake. Yeah.
Same.
Out of here. We'll see y'all guys tomorrow.
Just me and you. Something's going on. There's pain inside. We'll figure it out. We'll take the time. I'll see you in the morning. I'll say to you, come on, let's talk. Just me and you. Something's going on. There's pain inside. We'll figure it out. We'll take the time.